What's up, everyone? I'm going to allow a few people to get in. Don't worry for you TLDR bros that like to watch some of this content but don't have time for live streams. There is going to be a recap of this. So if you have found this video and went, wow, this is a little too long for me, there will be down in the description a link, or we'll put it somewhere on the page that shows you where the recap video of this is, just to the main points. But we'll allow a few folks to get in here because I do want to have a conversation with you guys. Part of this is to kind of cover what Taproot is. And I built a couple updates for you, a model that kind of shows a use case and really what the impact of something like Taproot for Bitcoin is. So I'm just not going to regurgitate information that's out there. There's a lot of really good information out there on the web on Taproot, but I want to make sure that you guys understand kind of a functional use of what it's going to come to Bitcoin and how it starts to make some changes. It's a pretty big update for Bitcoin. It's again another bullish thing that I look at from a functionality standpoint. There's also some risk with it when it comes to privacy, and we'll get into that here, but we'll allow some folks to get on. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this. That way we can get some good content in here. I'm going to be covering stuff from Jameson Lopp. I know he has some content on there from Casa. If you guys don't know what that is, that's a shameless plug for them. They're there's no sponsor to this video or anything like that today. I'm just kind of be shouting out some folks. I'm gonna cover some stuff through Binance Academy and a few other things. Again, not sponsored, just kind of showing you guys some of the content out there where some of this information is, captured from, and then we'll get into the use case that I put together in Draw.io, which I will make available for everybody. Hope you guys can hear me fine. Everything's good. Ozzy says greets from the Netherlands. Bro, it's pretty late there, isn't it? 4 o'clock plus 7 plus 6, so it's 10 o'clock there tonight. 11. Is Vosk and Elon hooking up? Your brother's son, who knows? So, all right, let's go ahead and get into this for anybody that was wanting to understand what Taproot is. So, there's a really good read here. I have it as a link below, and it kind of covers the three main core pieces of what Taproot is for Bitcoin. I'm going to get a little more specific when we start peeling back the model I had built to show you guys kind of what it does and how it works. But bottom line, it's going to reduce transaction fees, and that's because you can put a lot more data. It's going to obfuscate things into such a way that you don't have to store so much information of what's going on chain when you have like multi-signatures, where everybody has to sign, and now you have this like very expensive transaction because you have a lot of data and all that telemetry that has to come with that with multi-signatures. This is going to reduce that transaction fees because you are going essentially what they would call a master signature. So you can take the hashes of hashes and put those into a single, it's not elliptical curvature Schnorr signature, but you put it into a single Schnorr signature. Say that 3 times fast. And you're going to have some increase in privacy because it is going to effectively cloak a lot of the push to script functionality within Bitcoin. That's another key factor, but it's not completely, encrypting it like you would think, like a Zcash address, like a Z address would, or like Monero, where they're using ring signatures. You're still going to have essentially your unspent transaction output going out, doing something, and then you'll see some other side of the transaction coming in as that spent side, but you won't have any of the detail in between that you have right now. So I'll get into some of that, but it comes to specific functions when you're doing multi-signature, you're doing time locks, you're doing things that are more of the scripting side of Bitcoin is now going to be doing that in such a way that you exchange the fidelity through simplicity on the way it handles the signatures and the signing of things, to where now you kind of cleaned up a lot of that. For me, from a developer standpoint, it would be like code bloat to now more efficient use using the Schnorr signatures compared to the typical elliptical curve cryptography that's used with Bitcoin. And then you have more functionality from wallets. I like how Jameson brought this up. This number 3 point's a pretty key one here, to where you can have certain activities such as graceful decays. If you have 3 people signing a particular thing to make funds move, you can have a time lock condition in there to where if you don't get a response, transmitted out to the blockchain after a particular time, a signed transaction, as it were, it can actually reverse some of those actions. And now you can have it with 2 signatures, that sort of thing. So there's some interesting ways that functionality is going to be implemented now with the signal for Taproot. When we look at, there's another really good post here. I have this link here on Binance that it's kind of break it down and explain. Now they go a little more on the privacy side when it comes to like coin mixing and coin joins and that sort of thing. So that's a good coverage on that. And then the other big key piece is, as the signaling begins, who's all signed up for it. And, there's a whole bunch of articles out there if you're trying to look to see, who's on, who's not. But short of reading somebody else's article on there, and any of these articles are a snapshot in time. So it really matters when you click on that article and what's changed since then. It's something like when you're signaling on a blockchain for something, you got all the node participants and all the miners on a proof of work network. That information is as quick as this snapshot, right? This is why things like Taproot Watch, which if you just type up here at the top left, taproot.watch, it shows you the kind of signaling mechanism here. So it has to, when you go to activate a soft fork like this, you do it in between the times of an epoch. Well, an epoch for Bitcoin is 2016 blocks. That's when you have a difficulty adjustment in Bitcoin. So you can see the red blocks are signaling, hey, no thanks, my dude. Or they haven't, made any kind of change to their node. On the miners have nodes. That's how they read the blockchain and how they make new blocks from the successful, if they win the rights to a block with your hash rate, they then form that block, put transactions in it, and then post that block, and then everybody accepts that block because it has the right proof of work. Well, some of these have signal no, and then some of them just haven't made a change yet, right? So you can come over this and see each block winner. So when you put your mouse over it on this, you'll have, hey, F2 pool is signaling yes. You have, pull in miner signaling yes. Ant pool signaled yes. Slush pools did it, and then you have one right here, which is Huobi pool. Huobi has not yet. BTC.com hasn't. Surprise, surprise. I mean, BTC.com's owned by Bitcoin Cash, I believe, still. X pool still has not signaled. But you've had, a few that have switched it around, like Via BTC and Binance were not signaling in the beginning and have since switched their position now. So you can see here from the ones that have signaled, the 476 signaling blocks that have said yes, and then you see, what's here. When they say that there's out of all these blocks, if you pull them in there, you're starting to get around that 90 percentile of total hash rate. Now, that's not representative of this. If I copied all of these and put them into a table right now, and I have not done that yet, but I was going to do that before this, to see this distribution looks like you're only at about 60%, right? This is a 60-40 split. But some of these blocks were done before they started signaling yes. So you will have some blocks here, like Via BTC, saying no here, but down here, now they're saying yes. So there was one that was down here that showed them signaling yes. So when you see those figures of if a pool was on it or not, this is locked in history. So you might have a pool that was signaling no in the beginning, then has switched. The bottom line is you need at least 90%. So right now, as of this snapshot on this video right now, it's below the threshold at 11%. And it wouldn't technically activate. But as more start to do this, and more start to turn green here, the proportional hash rate that's out in Bitcoin's blockchain right now is going to signal. There's like 90%. So this should fill in to where it actually goes and actually activates. And then of course, peer pressure on some of this might like push one of those other pools over when you have a 90 percentile saying yes, because miners can make that choice of changing where the hash rate goes to a pool that is signaling yes. So this is where it really comes down to when we talk decentralized, like people are like, you got instances where they're like, hey, 90% of the hash rate is here, but when I look at this, the miners are still sending their hash rate to this other pool. Well, miners can make that choice of what pool they go to. So miners eventually will, if they want Taproot, will switch to pools that are signaling yes. And that's where you get that kind of critical mass start to move over. There's no other signal and noise than if you start losing your customers because you're not signaling for something. But let's quickly digress over to, I said in the beginning, a couple of big things that come with this for folks that got in a little late: really reduced transaction fees, increased privacy, more wallet functionality. There was a good little punch list here I had on one of these that showed a kind of a good what's to come from that. But I went ahead and built this. So this is the main thing I wanted to show you guys, is kind of walk you through a basic use case. Like a lot of cool stuff. People say that the tech is good, but this is really what I'm looking at here. So if we zoom in here, and I'm going to make this available for you guys to be able to download. I'll put it in the description. Just cite me on it, bros, if you're using it. I'll put like a BBT logo or something on it. But here's the main features. So it's adding Schnorr signatures for better foundational security. Schnorr signatures fix what they call a malleability. So if we remember back in the early days, I'm talking back when like I first started getting in 2011, 2012, part of the Mt. Gox hack was around transaction malleability. And what that really comes down to not bore everybody what transaction malleability is, effectively it's where you can spoof a signature before it's really broadcasted. So if you had some kind of architecture in your exchange set up to look for a valid transaction or not internally, you could get around any of that kind of that V&V, that verification and validation step, through that transaction malleability. So a lot of architectures were then changed around that. If they were making a post to the blockchain, they would actually wait for they would have multiple nodes. They'll send their broadcast a transaction, start getting validations and verifications on it, then may release the fact that something's occurring with there, right? So there's ways to start to try to fix that right now with the current Bitcoin, but it was never as foolproof as changing the underlying signature, the underlying security architecture when it comes to the signatures from EDCA, which is elliptical curve, encryption, to Schnorr signatures. So you have a fix of transaction malleability. Also, better multi-signature transactions from a price and efficiency standpoint, and that was highlighted in Jameson's post there. But the real specifics are where you can take multiple signature transactions and put those into one single master transaction that then carries that that security as one master key. That makes the transaction to the chain a lot leaner, which means you're spending less when you're on your transaction price, because it is an actual the price of that's going to be smaller because it's a smaller size. You'll see people discuss that now you can get a lot more transactions per second. There is actually some back of the neck math on that right now, where you're seeing close to where Bitcoin has a max of about 11 transactions per second. Theoretically, with Schnorr signatures, if you had enough wallet development and people changing their architecture to this, once this is in, you could get around 50 transactions per second equivalent. It's a bad metric because it just isn't measured normally that way. It's a matter of like how many, how much complexity can you put in? Because if we say it's 11 transactions per second, if somebody paid a lot of money to get their transaction in, and it was a complex transaction with time locks and all this other stuff, you might only have one Bitcoin transaction with 200 transactions in it because somebody filled up this block space with a complex transaction. So that's why I'm saying TPS is not a really good metric, but it just comes down to where that gets reduced, which is better for the entire user community environment. The other piece here I want to say that I kind of covered that, the lower transaction fees and reduced amount of data. Now, here's the key part about a use case that I wanted to kind of show to you guys. So this is around a topic around like on-chain telemetry and kind of what it means for, and this just isn't for like, if it's, the Chinese government or some other government, even the U.S. government, if it's not just about governments or third-party parsing companies, but there's a lot of analytical data from finance companies that are traditional finance companies that are getting into this chain space, and they're setting up essentially what's in this green box. So they're reading in all these different crypto networks to get transaction data, look at spending habits, look at like the way the money's moving from exchanges, tagged addresses, all of that sort of thing. So it's not just about like some kind of like anti-money laundering stuff, but there's also a lot of just data companies that now tie into a lot of this information that's open public ledger data. And you don't necessarily need to assign an individual's name there to get some telemetry from it. And that's another really key part when it comes to like as more and more complexity gets built onto these crypto networks. If you can really peel back how the transactions are occurring, if we think of like an Ethereum transaction as an example where you're seeing all of the DeFi stuff, there's a thing called the dark forest, which is where you're seeing a transaction that's about to get posted. Same thing with Bitcoin. Like when you see transactions that are getting posted large amounts, if it's an exchange address, you can see exchange inflows and outflows. And you can build your financial modeling and your front running based on a lot of that type of data. This green box to the left is effectively that parsing where you have nodes running inside, like live nodes that are in these companies that then pull that telemetry data. They actually read in the entire database. They look at all that transaction change data against any kind of tagging that they have. They have a whole bunch of ETL data lake type of setups. And then they have some probably custom analyst software that they're using. A lot of this activity that can read that will now be ossificated. So like you're going to see data from the input and then the output, but you're not going to see this stuff in the middle anymore. So that's what really Taproot brings to it. And I'm using this example as, a block and then transactions in there. And this transaction happens to be a time lock. A time lock can be used for all kinds of things, but what it comes down to is you can set a parameter on a Bitcoin transaction to, unless you get a trigger of a future signature, it won't release the money to wherever the output is. Otherwise, it'll return it back to the sender, right? So there are a whole bunch of different applicational uses for that, escrow services, that sort of thing that are built on Bitcoin. That now that detail effectively is shielded with something like Taproot. And I wanted to show kind of this little pink box here or purple box, that kind of activity now is going to be shielded. Now, something like Litecoin, like let's say if we're talking like atomic swap transaction. So it's simply a atomic swap transaction would be just, somebody sends this into a push to script atomic contract that's on Bitcoin with a from address and then a to address, which gets filled in essentially by somebody that's on the other side. Let's say they're on the Litecoin network and you're trying to exchange Bitcoin for Litecoin purely autonomically, which means it's not going through an exchange or a decentralized exchange or any of that. You're literally using the features within the blockchain itself, the crypto within Bitcoin, to time lock it until a certain signature comes through and then send it out to this output address, which that escrow address then would forward it on to the endpoint person. So you would have both parties would both have Bitcoin and Litecoin addresses that they would be putting in their inputs and outputs to where you're sending your Bitcoin and then you're getting Litecoin on the Litecoin network on behalf of it. Now, in that particular scenario where you have any kind of telemetry coming in between these, if you're having any monitoring or anything like that between like Litecoin and Bitcoin, it's if you don't know the person's address, all you can make is assumptions, right? If you don't know who the person behind the address is, but there is telemetry you can gain that if you watch a transaction in that time-like fashion, that's a known push-to-script atomic swap transaction. If you had telemetry setting on both chains, you could have enough data to partially figure out like, hey, I'm sending 10 Bitcoin here, and magically 10 Bitcoin worth of Litecoin at the current spot price came out of this other side. It's not foolproof. It's not 100% snap. It probably never hold up in any kind of law, but like the telemetry still can be garnered from it, and you can make a pretty good assumption on those. With Bitcoin having Taproot on that side, that would then obfuscate that whole entire thing. You would just see essentially things happen and then maybe another new Litecoin transaction in a time lock. And it's just a matter of time before any kind of code base that has the core of Bitcoin starts to look about maybe implementing that the same way with like Litecoin did segregated witness and that sort of thing. So I had a lot of people reaching out to me on what's up with Taproot. They've read some stuff, but they didn't really understand the real implications of what this means. There's a whole other type of thing. I'll take some questions and stuff for you guys on the on this live stream from you guys. But there's a whole other side with like, what does this mean from a privacy standpoint when it comes to our company's going to have to make a change? Is this dangerous for all these large entities to start accepting Taproot transactions, that sort of thing? Because this is a soft fork, which means that your node can support it, but will it accept a Taproot transaction or not? That sort of thing is up for question, I would assume. And, I would love to have a really good open debate with somebody familiar in the Bitcoin space with this, because I have my own assumptions on this. And I think if you get 90% of the world saying that you want to go this one way, then it probably needs to be looked at on the telemetry side to say, maybe this isn't the thing you're scanning. But like, there's some discussion to be had there, I think. But, from a technological standpoint, that's effectively what Taproot is. And I've given you guys some sources here. I'll open up for some questions and then we'll wrap this one up. I'll try to keep it right at 30 minutes. We're going to have a recap of this where I'm just going to try to skip to the main core points of this for people that couldn't stay for it all. It'll be a separate video, just kind of cut to the chase. So it obfuscates the inputs and outputs like Mimblewimble. No, I think that's a little different because this is a lot more transparent because you're still going to have the entire ledger. It's just going to look on things that have complexity or showing multiple, like a multi-sig, a contract through push to script. You can see all the three the three inputs. From like, let's say a three-way multi-signature, you can see all that, and you can see that those three inputs are to that single address. This is it's going to look like one address out to another. So it's just going to make the ledger look like there's just inputs and outputs, and you're not going to see a lot of the complexity. That if they're using the Schnorr signatures in the architecture. So it is different than like the Z addresses and all that. Like the ledger is still transparent. It's just the moving around of things is a little more. You're able to take away to delineate and keep it more less detail. On the transparency side. Yes. We do have a code for the Miner Summit. What was the actual code right now? We're actually doing I'm going to have a pre-roll of that on the recap of this video. We're actually working on it right now. It's BBT MS 2021. So I'm going to, I can't type it in this. Why can't I type? Oh, because I'm simulcasting right now on this. Let me go into, Hold on real quick, guys. I'll type it in the chat if you're thinking about the Miners Summit. YouTube. So yeah, that pre-roll is coming. Let's get we're getting some feedback here. Let's do so BBT MS 2021. So that's the code on Miner Summit for, I believe it's 20% off. So yeah. Thanks for asking that, Michael. So what's your thoughts about RVN? What specifically? I'm a big RVN fan. So Ravencoin, I've always been a strong Ravencoin fan. I mean, eventually Ravencoin might flag for Taproot too, I would assume. What do you think about IOTA, or do you not care about not mineable coins? I don't follow a lot of non-mineable coins, honestly. I mean, only things that are enhancing mineable architectures. And I'm taking a pragmatic approach at learning more about proof of stake coins. And with the ETH 2.0 coming up, and being a longtime ETH miner, I'm doing a lot of the research on it and trying to get myself into a place that I can accept the fact that that's going to end up changing finally. So Taproot creates lower fees. Yes. Theoretically, it's like a almost a 3x improvement from just the compression side of taking certain information and bringing it down to where you have a single signature. But it doesn't mean that you won't have high fees on Bitcoin. I mean, it just means that you can put more in it. So on high activity times, you're still going to have a high. High from Zert. Nice, my dude. I think the markets are crashing for the leading coins. BTC is a sell according to the moving averages. Well, I don't think anybody that's been charting saw the Elon effect, and I don't think anybody charting now is still going to give you. I mean, there's a time and a place for technicals. I think we're now entering a space where it's a few things need to probably come out to build some more consumer confidence, but there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, like, a lot of people are attributing this pullback to Elon, but like Taproot was activated around the same time, and I think there might be some institutions that are saying, "Hey, this network's going to switch to where it's going to start obfuscating some of these transactions." Is that going to push towards a regulatory oversight in the U.S. to make things a little more difficult for like institutions and stuff? And is there going to be any of that kind of set up? And it was about the same time that all the Elon FUD came out, and I would say don't read a book totally by its cover when it comes to crypto, because usually the actions that are happening in the background don't necessarily correlate with some of the news. But I mean, there is some pretty staunch on a few things like Dogecoin going up when Elon talks, that kind of thing. But Bitcoin, it's not running back up, could be part of Taproot too. What do you think about hard drive farming like Chia? I literally, the day it launched, had it on a computer and set up a couple plots, and I think got one coin on like, I don't know, 4 terabytes or something that I had set up, and it was saying that I would get one every like 12 hours, and then when I looked at it the next day, it was like you'll get one like every 8 days or something, and then it flew up. I think until they can get a pool set up concept to where you can collectively share hashes, it's going to be and maybe they already have that. I haven't checked into it totally. I just, it's the same thing I have with like Helium. I haven't really covered Helium yet. I'm researching Helium for anybody that's wondering why I haven't made a Helium video yet. I got a couple companies wanting to send me devices, and I couldn't get a couple key things explained to me, and I just got a lot of questions with Helium when it comes to like the overall. I mean, it's fine plugging in a device that's a different way to do some kind of mining that provides this kind of mesh network, But when I start to really peel it back, a lot of those things like need FCC compliance and that kind of thing. So I got some questions. I want to go through it architecturally, and then I might start talking about helium. Same thing with with the chia. I guess chia is the enunciation of it, but with the hard drive mining, I've read through the white paper, the VDF, and like the way they solve some of the grinding issues that like Burstcoin had. So I have an architectural understanding of the way it works. I just haven't really pushed on to like try to convince people to buy a whole bunch of hardware on it yet. From a user market perspective, I mean, the mining pool issue has been part of the issue. Crypto tech, what do we need help with? Love to have you explain more about helium. Yeah, so a lot of it was, I understand the networking side of it. I don't understand on how the mesh network works from like if you're sharing your internet connection um, type of thing. There's not a lot of data on that. There's just, like if you're putting like, and why somebody would want to have 10 nodes on their house type of thing. Like typically if you're doing some kind of Yagi antenna or something from a mesh networking side, you're not going to put 10 antennas next to each other, that type of thing. Unless they had different frequencies on them or something to that effect. It just seemed like it was exploiting a normal like rush to market, proof of work kind of concept. But it makes sense for people to have one or two big antennas maybe, and then earn helium off of that. But like I've seen like some of these folks that have like entire sheets of plywood with like 15 devices on it, and it's like stuck to the back of their house type of thing, and that doesn't make sense to me. No, one per location. You're not putting more than one in one house. Yeah, but like look across the internet. Like people are putting in several. I don't know. I'm not gonna. I need to do more research with it, man. And maybe it was somebody else trying to just buy lots of them. HIP 17 stops the gaming. Okay, interesting. So they get negative rewards with that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do. So I want to do a deep dive. If you want to send me a message on bitsbetrippin at Gmail, and we'll, like what I've offered is I've had a few of the companies reach out about doing a helium review. They were trying to send me a device. I'll buy a device. I don't need anybody to send me one for free. I'll buy one and I'll do a breakdown architecturally of what it is, kind of like this. I like explaining like what's the benefit of it and the coverage of it. Awesome, James. No, it doesn't matter. You want them 300 meters apart. Yeah, I don't know if it was people just trying to game it or something, but trying to get more rewards. And then how it works with like against like broadcasting FCC stuff. Like if you're reboosting networks and stuff. Like I mean, certain internet providers have a problem with if you were like long not eons ago, but about 7 years ago, I had a really high gain Yagi antenna boosting my internet like 2 miles, and that was a big no no. So these are obviously not going that far. Yeah, send me an email, Crypto Tech. We'll talk about it. Lots of questions with helium, and lots of questions um, with chai, and there's a lot of the. That's why I haven't made any videos about it. Is from a part. I'm most of this channel always tell, like once fair market participation, like you guys all know, with like that's why GPUs have always been kind of the mainstay for me. But like without the ability to pool with Chia, I just like until they got that, it didn't make sense because it's just everybody's fighting after the same thing. Yeah, Chris, if you rewind, buddy, you'll catch all that update. VTC says that they're upgrading for Taproot. Yeah, in this I didn't. Oh, Hobie Pool is signaling yes now. Hobie was not earlier. OKX is still not. And see, like on Binance Pool was not right here, but now Binance Pool is doing it. Yeah, via BTC. There's via, and they weren't before. All right, my dudes. So this video, if you missed most of it, there is going to be a recap on this. And we'll try to keep it, 5-10 minutes at most. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. We'll have the produced video. Anybody that's going to the Miner Summit, we're also going to have that 20% off code. That's going to be in the Ozarks. I'll be there the 14th and 15th of June out in the Ozarks. I'm going to be covering some live coverage there. And talking to some folks there. There's a Bitmain's going to be out there. Slush Pool's going to be out there. Can't wait to have that conversation with Slush Pool. And a lot more content coming your way, guys.